Students learn three very important things when they come to this program. They learn a new language, which is the part that probably attracts the most attention. But they also learn about deaf culture, and it is very different because of the need to communicate most easily through a visual language and often feeling oppressed by the hearing majority in that need. And there's centuries of history of hearing people thinking that deaf people didn't really need to have a visual language. And research has proven time and time again that a visual language is the most accessible communication when your ears don't function normally. So there's the language and the culture, and then there's the professional skills and the ethical considerations that are part of the interpreting profession. So considering that we hit all three of those in 3 years, students have to be really well motivated, self-motivated, and able to learn things very rapidly and apply them very rapidly. The lab here is used as our high-tech practice. You have a difficult time analyzing your own production of sign language unless you can see it recorded. Even if you try to watch yourself in a mirror, you don't really get enough feedback to analyze whether you're producing the sign language appropriately or not. So primarily it's used for students to record themselves signing and then be able to do some self-evaluation or teacher evaluation of how well they're producing their sign communication. We also have access to the internet and several DVDs and VHS recordings of deaf people signing, and so it's a way to practice receptive skills in the language and to start practicing doing what's called voicing, where you're having to watch ASL being produced and then supply the English voice for the hearing audience. So initially it's to record and be able to do some evaluation of those skills, also have a record of how well they've improved throughout the class. We try to have deaf instructors teaching ASL as often as we can. So since ASL is, or American Sign Language, is the native language of our deaf teachers, it adds a very deaf perspective and a richness to an ASL class with a deaf teacher. If we do not have a deaf instructor in that class, we have very experienced interpreters teaching those classes. All of our classes are taught by either a deaf community member or a fully licensed Iowa interpreter with 5 or more years of interpreting experience. From the very beginning, in your very first ASL class, part of what you're required to do is go to social events with the deaf community. And it's to get out there and interact with the deaf community and use your beginning language skills. And the deaf community is very, very patient with our students and help them bridge the gap. And it's the best way to acquire language quickly is to interact with the actual users. In class, it gets, we do practice things, but it doesn't replicate real conversation. At the very last semester, students here go out on Practicum. And part of Practicum is 160 hours with a licensed interpreting mentor. And so they go out for approximately half of that 160 hours in a K-12 situation with a mentor from that environment. And they very quickly move from observing that interpreter to actually taking the interpreter's seat and interpreting for the students. And then the other half of the 160 hours, they go with a freelance mentor who has a very variable schedule, and they may interpret at the Arsenal, at John Deere, medical appointments, college classroom settings. And so the students get a taste of what all those different situations are and the different requirements for those situations. A lot of the contacts within the community happen all the way through, but especially during that practicum, because they're working with interpreters that are working in the community. So as they impress the school districts and the interpreters working in the school districts, there's a likelihood that, oh, there's a job opening, I need to contact that really good student and have them come in and apply for the job. Or if they're out there working in the freelance community, then they get exposure to the owners of the various interpreting agencies, and that interpreter agency will say, oh, I know this, brand new graduate who's got a new license, and they would be appropriate to team with this other qualified interpreter or work on their own in different situations. We also work very hard in, some students want to go out and get their bachelor's. And so we work very hard to help them articulate into other programs to get their bachelor's. We currently have an articulation agreement with Western Illinois and the Quad Cities. We also have one with St. Ambrose University and one with William Woods College in Fulton, Missouri. And we have a student this year that's going off to Western Oregon University to finish her bachelor's in interpreting.